everybody, and welcome to the Parishscope, the podcast of St. John's Lutheran Church. I'm Pastor Chris Sansom.
And I'm Casey Doremus. I'm the contemporary DPG.
DPG, that's the title.
Yep.
And I'll be honest, right away tonight, what we're going to do is, Casey really threw down the gauntlet in terms of the pumpkin muffin. Mm-hmm. And we're just going to call it straight out the Pumpkin Muffin Challenge. We had a couple of them. Come in on Sunday, and we saw that. Now we have two more that stand before us. Now I was just right before we started. I was just telling Casey I needed to take a picture and I needed to post this on Facebook. And then I said, I'm really bad about that. I'm going to complete self-own here. Like I know that I am bad about posting things on Facebook. So hopefully I will post some of the pictures that I took of us getting ready to have these muffins. Now, the person who gave us these muffins, they graciously gave me some as well. So I'm sitting here. I got two muffins in front of me. And I'll be honest with you, I'm just looking at these things. Just look at these. I am in trouble. Guys, I am in trouble.
Well, we should say, because if you weren't at the contemporary services last week, Pastor Chris, this was not something I was aware of was going to happen, because I thought I was going to get some free pumpkin muffins after service or something and take them home. But Pastor Chris decided that at the very beginning of church, when announcements happened, that he was going to present two different pumpkin spice muffins, and I was going to eat them on the spot.
That's right.
I typically try not to eat breakfast in the morning because it kind of gunks up your throat. So that was a fun challenge, but I feel like I got through that part.
Oh, you got through
The hardest part was sitting for the rest of the service with two pumpkin muffins that I really wanted to eat.
Yes.
Sitting next to me the whole service and being like, I really shouldn't because that'll be bad for my throat.
Yeah.
But I, of course, ate them immediately afterwards. But I should also say that Pastor Chris stands victorious so far. But
I mean, again, I'm looking at these muffins, and I'm going to be honest with you guys. I am in trouble. These things look fantastic. I mean, these things look fantastic. Casey's the judge here. Casey's the one that's going to be the person who's going to rate these. I don't know how he's going to do it. I'm biased. I am completely biased. Although, I mean, again, I'm looking at this. I don't know how biased I'm going to be.
I don't know.
So, so I will now describe the muffins in gracious detail. No, but I'm going to give Casey a chance to take a bite out of each.
Okay.
Just because I'm sure he doesn't want like a bunch of silence and munching and stuff while I sit here and while everybody listens and goes, oh, what's going on?
Okay, so we got two I shouldn't say pies. We got two pumpkin muffins here. And one has pecans, right? Pecans. And then the other one has no pecans. I'm have the one with no pecans. Now, this almost feels like an actual pumpkin pie.
Yeah, kind of. And I mean, it's got like almost a crumble on top.
Yeah, it's like this is like a pumpkin pie with a crumble, that almost feels like cheating to some degree.
I mean, I would love to say, oh, this is cheating, but if I'm truly honest, have you seen how much sugar goes into a muffin? I mean, it is, and then you put chocolate chips and stuff in it. I mean,
it's one of those things where this is probably a terrible analogy, but when I was in high school, we had to do these like ensemble pieces for competitions, and we did one where we didn't play anything. We just did like beatboxing.
Yeah.
So there'd be groups of people being like boom, 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 and they'd be like, duh, 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 duh. So
yeah.
And at the end, the judge went, "Well, you guys didn't play anything, so I guess I'll give you a perfect." I don't know. Like he just admittedly was like, "I'm giving you a 1." But I honestly, like, I don't know why you did this here. So that's my only, like, is pumpkin. I mean, it just seems like it is pumpkin pie almost. Okay, I'll try.
Yeah, he needs to try it. I mean, again, I just knowing how muffins are made, and I mean, I just don't know, because there's so much sugar in it, and it's almost like a pumpkin cake what you're making, and again, you add chocolate chips and stuff like that. I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't know if that's really classified as a pumpkin pie. I think this is just a very, very, very special pumpkin muffin. And again, I wish I'm going to be the one. I wish I could say it was cheating because then I would be victorious. Ha ha ha! But alas, I just don't think I can go that route.
You want to try it?
Well, I mean, I will eventually, but I'm waiting for the judge.
The judge.
Oh,
this is hard because the one thing I didn't think about this whole idea, is that every time I choose someone's going to be mad at me for not choosing their side, and so I feel terrible because I don't want to, and I'm going to get people.
Luckily, you got a good bunch. I don't think anybody could be mad at you.
Well, there's some people out there. Here's my thing. This is really good.
Yeah. I'm in trouble.
No, but I feel like it's not really a pumpkin muffin. Because it's like, it's like a pumpkin pie. So
is that, I mean, how do you classify it then?
I don't know. I mean, maybe that's just up to the person eating it.
I mean,
look, you see that? I mean, it's like, it is like a pie filling. And I'm not upset by it. I'm eating the whole thing for sure. But at this point, if I was at a party, there was a bunch of different options. I don't want to upset anybody, but I would still take your pumpkin muffin, Pastor Chris.
Oh, he's saying that because I'm
not. I'm not just saying that because you're here. I'm serious because I'm like, that's like a pumpkin muffin. This is delicious, don't get me wrong. Once again, I'm eating the whole thing, and if I got more of them, I would eat them. That's the whole point of this. But
I'll be honest, I did a Google, so I'm trying to look at it.
Are you Googling if like pumpkin pie filling can be a muffin?
I'll be honest. I'm looking up here. Most of the things that I'm finding out is the distinction between a muffin versus a cupcake.
Oh, a cupcake. Or a tart.
A muffin is an individually portioned baked product.
That's the definition of a muffin?
The term can refer, and look guys, I am going straight from the source. This is Wikipedia.
That's, anybody who wants to downplay, and I know there's probably like English people, English teachers or something who's like, it's not a reliable source, but I mean, come on.
It is a semi-reliable source. However, I will say there is some inaccuracies on it, so I don't want to say that.
From time to time. But this, this isn't, it's not 2003. It's done pretty well over the years.
So it can be the term can refer to one of two distinct items: a part raised flatbread, like a crumpet, that is baked and then cooked on a griddle, or a often sweetened quick bread that is chemically leavened and then baked in a mold.
Okay.
Maybe I'm reading this wrong, but again, I'm not seeing anything that says that this wouldn't be a muffin.
I guess so. I guess it's just a social.
I mean, you can even have a cornmeal and cheese muffin. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm thinking like cheesecake, like, probably same kind of difference.
Yeah. Now, the top of it, like you said, is like a crumble.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So here's my thing. Here's the muffin. Flip it upside down. That's a pie. I mean, the crumble is a crust.
Well, I mean, look, I'm not the man. I'm not the man that creates like the definition. I'm just reading it.
Right.
I'm just reading the definition.
Right. And that's what we do as Christians. We just read the Bible and do what we can.
We read it and we try. All right, I got to try.
Yeah, you got to try it too.
Oh yeah. That's pretty darn good.
It is good.
I mean, I'm happy that you chose mine, but I can't.
Oh, I'm not saying this is bad by any means.
I'm just saying I don't know if I would have chose mine. I would have probably chose this.
Well, I feel like it's a little bit, not to get too far onto a metaphor that's too close, but it's sort of like apples and oranges. It's like if I think of a pumpkin muffin, I think of what, like you gave me on Sunday, because that's like a bread, like kind of like a bread, sort of thing with pumpkin spice. Now here's my question.
Yes,
I'm assuming this was made with like actual pumpkin like filling, or So,
but mine was too.
Well, yeah, of course there is that in there as well. I guess so. Okay, that's a path I'm not going to keep going on.
In fact, all of the muffins have some kind of pumpkin puree or something in them.
Right.
I mean, I guess I didn't ask exactly what they used. Mine actually had real pumpkin that I pureed myself.
And that's probably why you're on top right now.
That's why I'm winning.
See, now this sucks because now someone's going to be upset with me.
No.
On it. But it is delicious. It's very delicious. It's just a different.
This is very good. Different. I mean, I think I would eat this more as a dessert. Mine was definitely more of like a breakfast item. Mm-hmm. But I think the other contender was also kind of like a dessert almost.
It was more dessert.
It was almost akin to like pumpkin bars almost. It was thick. Yeah. And we've talked about, some reasons why that probably was, but yeah, I mean, I think, and see, that's one of the problems too, is like, I would choose this as a dessert over mine any day of the week. This is fabulous. And by the way, again, there's two of them. One has pecans. I actually prefer the one with the pecans, but I actually like nuts.
I do too, yeah.
So,
but
well, you said you didn't like real crunchy nuts. Well, like a peanut.
Okay. The thing is, it depends on the food, because sometimes if there's nuts that kind of, if they're softened by cooking and everything, I'm totally fine with that. If you're eating something and it feels like someone accidentally dropped a bag of like nuts into a recipe and you're chewing through it and it's like, oh, this is delicious. Oh, okay, I got it. And it's almost like you gotta chew through the nuts to get to the real food. That to me is like, that's not, that's not good.
That's not good to you. I gotcha. I mean, again, I'll be honest. I'm going to disagree with you. I love nuts and I love like crunchy things. So for me, I'm all over that one. But I get what you're saying. I do. Mm-hmm. So, all right. Oh man, we're gonna have a whole discussion. Yeah. So and I don't know. I don't quite know what's going to happen. I know Casey and I have been kind of talking about what we're going to do. We record these on Tuesday evening, and I know we've mentioned that before, but next Tuesday is Halloween.
Yes.
And so that's kind of one of the reasons too that we did like the Halloween episode like last time, because honestly, I have no idea if we're going to be able to record this next week or not. And so, I guess it's not the end of the world if we miss a week, but at the same time, I just kind of wanted to see, what we could do. And we still haven't decided. We kind of discussed about, seeing if there's other times that we can meet and so on and so forth. But I'll be honest, with my schedule, with his schedule, I'm not so sure we're gonna make that happen. So we might end up missing a week. I'll be sure to let you know, maybe on Facebook. Mm-hmm. Again, with that whole posting on Facebook thing, that I'm obviously really bad at. So
I think that's actually kind of a good quality though, because it shows that you're not you're not as glued to your phone constantly as or feel the need to like constantly be sharing stuff all the time.
It's true. It's true.
It is probably a good thing. And I speak as someone who, works part-time for a company doing social media. So it's actually sort of a challenge for me to be like, oh, I need to like post more. Mm-hmm. Because I'm not the person who's like, oh, I got to share something right now,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I feel like when I was in college, I was better. But then again, that was college, right? So, I mean.
Now, do you get Facebook memories a lot that are like from, like, how long have you had a Facebook? Have you had one for?
I got a Facebook, would it have been in 2004, 2005?
Okay. So, yeah, like I about that time, a little after that for me.
Yeah.
But it's funny because when you get those memories from like 15 years ago or 13 years ago, and it's just your status is like Casey is feeling tired.
Yeah.
But that's what it was back then.
Yeah.
You just shared dumb things.
And I get some of those every now and again. And it's like, tell us how you're feeling. And it's like, ... is. And then like that was, you were like supposed to fill it in. And remember, this was like, back in the day, I mean, again, I don't know how many years ago this was for you, but whenever I first started, you had to have a college email account.
It had just kind of broken away from that because I got it in high school.
Okay. See, and I'll also admit, and I don't even want to admit this, but I mean, I was pre-Facebook, I was on MySpace.
Oh, I was too, for sure.
And that was where everything was at. It was a hopping place. And then Facebook came along, and like MySpace died.
Yeah, it really
and I mean stunk. Fast.
Yeah. Well, it was honestly the whole thing. I think was at the time there was a chat on Facebook, and there wasn't a chat thing on. I mean, you could send messages.
Okay.
But it wasn't like a AOL Instant Messenger. If that's another reference. But like on Facebook, you could just sit there and you could talk back and forth. And on MySpace, you had to like go back and check your inbox to see if someone replied to you.
Okay. Yeah.
And so people were just like, it's so much easier to chat on Facebook, and then they just completely, which is a shame because the funny part is I've actually heard kids now, like in middle school, high school, say, I wish you could customize your Facebook page and put like a song on it or something. And they have all these things. And it's like, that's exactly what MySpace was back in the day.
Yeah.
No, I had a MySpace and I had a band that we had a MySpace page. So with music up, So.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. Like I was in seminary. I would get onto some of those threads. The groups was always big.
Yeah.
And, undoubtedly a fight would emerge and you get into this theological debate. Yeah. I lived for it for a while.
Oh, yeah. It was fun. But I mean,
it was fun it was fun as long as nobody got all bent out of shape, which, I'll be honest, there were some groups where some people really did get really bent out of shape and you're just like, okay.
Yeah. It is. That's actually something I kind of in the last few years, I started joining a few like fan pages of different shows I really like. And it's kind of surprising just for people who maybe don't get out much or can't get out much. It's kind of amazing how you can connect with people. So I don't know. It's interesting.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, any technology has pros and cons. I mean, again, and that's just the reality is that it has pros and it has cons. And I mean, even from a theological thing, like, when we think about evangelism, a lot of times people get evangelism on Facebook wrong in that, they post like a Bible passage here or there. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. If that's something that you do, that's fabulous. But don't post a verse or two and then say, okay, I've evangelized today. No.
Yeah.
No, evangelism is different. But one of the good things about it is, like, let's say I go somewhere, I make, I have a connection, I have a relationship, a friendship, a kinship, if you will, with somebody. I can maintain that. Even if I'm hundreds of miles away, I can maintain that through something like social media or with like a Facebook or dare I say Snapchat. I don't have Snapchat, but maybe something like that.
Yeah.
But you get the idea. Like you can maintain some of those relationships and friendships. And that's where a lot of evangelism really happens because I had a guy at seminary once, and this was not actually when I was a student there, but I actually went to an evangelism conference. And he basically said, who here, if they saw a very passionate quote from the Quran, would decide to change faiths?
Yeah.
And of course, like nobody raised their hand. And he's like, so why do you expect them to change faith if you post a psalm or a quote from the gospel? And it's a very powerful point. But then he goes on to say, but you might listen to somebody that cares about you and that has developed this relationship with you over these years. And so one of the things that he brought into light is in a modern era, use technology for good, but don't just check out. Don't just check out like you can just post a verse and it's all done. No, build a relationship. I mean, if that's one of the things that you're gifted at, then that's, by all means, that's one of the things that Facebook is good for. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it is an incredible tool. But yeah, I'm not always great about sharing stuff. I actually now share more stuff because of my kids. And I don't share it because I need people to see my kids because like memories pop up and I'll be like, oh, this was your son like 3 years ago at this thing. And I'm like, oh, man, there's my son. And so now I'm like, I'll post stuff from time to time because they'll pop up later. And when I'm very old and need a pick me up, it'll be like 40 years ago. Look at your kid. And I'm like,
that's right. 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh man. I'm not gonna lie. I actually had like a modern story I was going to talk about, but I'm going to be honest. We've just sat here and talked about Facebook and evangelism. I'm just going to move right past that.
Okay.
I mean, it was a very serious topic, and I was like, "Ooh, you know what? We'll get to it later." Well, maybe at our next podcast.
Yeah.
So
that's an interesting idea in itself because, like, I think sometimes there's some people, and I think at times in my life I have been this person, or times I haven't, that there are some people who kind of feel like if I'm not kind of on a crusade right now, I'm not like trying to fight for something or getting on something, then am I wasting my time, or am I not being like grateful for my time on earth and all that? Or, how much as Christians, I mean, and maybe it's okay, you don't have an answer if you don't have an answer to this, but like as Christians, like how much do we need to be really serious in the trenches, like trying to do something to change the world, and how much do we just need to kind of enjoy life and relax?
Okay. I've actually got a response to this, and it's a good one. I am afraid I'm going to get a little technical, and I don't want to get too crazy.
Okay,
I'll try to ask. Right, that's why you're here, because you're going to ask me some questions.
I'll try to. Yeah,
that's not the only reason you're here. I mean, we love you, but anyway,
to start a conversation and eat pumpkin muffins.
That's right, eat pumpkin muffins. But what I'd like to do is I actually want to go to the Great Commission. The Great Commission is in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 28, and I believe, let me see, I think it starts in verse 18, if I remember correctly. Okay. And you guys have probably heard it. And Casey, I know you've heard it, right? Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them all the things I have commanded you, right? So there it is, the big Great Commission. And I think it's mistranslated. I really do. I think it's mistranslated. There's a lot of debate over this. And I've kind of had this discussion a few times, but what it comes down to is this. Go, therefore, and make disciples. It's done as an imperative. An imperative is a grammatical mood, and it basically has this force that goes with it, right? Like if I was to say, go clean your room, like that's an imperative, right? I'm demanding that you do it.
Okay.
And so people look at that and they go, okay, well, we are told to go, like go.
Yeah.
What this is in grammatical terms, and I understand not everybody's going to know what this means, it's what they call a participle of attendant circumstance. I know. I just said a lot of words that a lot of people are like, what in the world did you just say, Pastor?
English was never my best subject. But
So a participle is kind of a verbal noun of sorts. Usually you can see them, to be honest with you, kind of the quick dirty guide is to say like ing. Like if the word has if you're going or doing this or whatever, if it's an ing, it kind of usually has a kind of a participle swing to it. Now that's not entirely accurate. There are we could go into all kinds of craziness, but I'm not going to go there. We can talk about the ablative. Anyway, I'm not going to talk about the ablative, but we're talking about participles. But needless to say, it's hard to start a sentence with a participle. Think about the word going, right? If I was just walking out on the street and I said, going to the park, it would sound kind of strange. There was no subject to the sentence, right? Who's going to the park?
Yeah.
Am I going to the park? Is he going to the park? Who's going to there's no subject. And so it's really hard. But with Greek, it does this really unique thing, and it has like two or three instances where it actually utilizes a participle as it begins, as it introduces. One of them is called a genitive absolute. There's also a thing called a nominative absolute, and so they kind of have these elements to them where Greek is utilizing that participle, and it's using the participle like a kind of like a workhorse to emphasize things. When you have a participle that begins a sentence and the standard grammatical features do not make sense, you can utilize something known as attendant circumstance. And what that is that is where the participle pulls the mood or the voice from the words that come after it. So in this case, there are two participles in the Great Commission. One of them is baptize, and the other one is teach.
Okay.
And so what the grammarians have decided is that the go therefore is actually pulling that emphasis, that imperative from the word baptize, and it's pulling it back so that the emphasis also falls on go. The problem is, and this is the problem that I have with it,
okay.
And by the way, there's even in our own synod, there's some people that say, Pastor Chris, you're wrong. But it makes too much sense to use the attributive model, which is where I'm not going to explain it. I'm sorry. I started to explain something. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to sit here giving a grammar lesson all night long, and I don't want that. But basically, it goes down like this. There is a way to translate it that I think makes perfect sense, and it's completely fitting with the grammar, and it makes all the sense in the world, which means, in my eyes, there's no reason to use attendant circumstance because the right way to translate it makes perfect sense.
Okay.
The correct way to translate it is while you are going.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Now, obviously this changes a lot, but think about this. So you're getting ready, and Jesus is talking to his disciples. He's preparing to leave them to ascend into heaven, and he says, "Hey, while you are going," that is to say, they're gonna go anyway. They're already going. But while you are going, and then the two imperatives come. That is to say, he demands that they do two things: baptize in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teach all of the things that he has commanded. Are basically to teach people to keep. And again, there's a mistranslation of that word too. We have a tendency to translate that as obey. The actual word there means to keep, as in to guard or watch or guard over. So basically, Jesus is saying, hey, baptize people and baptize them in the name of the Holy Trinity and teach them all of my words that I have spoken and given to you. And so that's the command. That's what we are commanded to do. And all of this is while we are going.
Interesting.
Which means that we're already going to go.
Yeah.
And if you look at it in that light, all of a sudden, a lot of things begin to shift and adjust, right? You don't have to go on a mission trip. I mean, there's nothing wrong with going on a mission trip, but you don't have to. Sometimes you just got to go to the grocery store or go do your job or whatever it happens to be. God is going to place people around you and in your life. And as he places those people around you and in your life, you will have the opportunity to evangelize. And so while you are going, you are, kind of instructed by God to teach people and ultimately to bring them to a church and get them baptized and all that kind of stuff. So it's already there. And those are the imperatives, right? Make disciples. And here's how you do it. You baptize and you teach.
That does change. It really does. It feels like this whole different, it's a whole different viewpoint, really. And it makes a lot, that makes a lot of sense to me as far as, especially like to bring in some things we've talked about before, like the Martin Luther thing about, should I put crosses on these shoes or
no, just make good shoes.
Just make good shoes. It's like I don't know. I'm kind of tying that in with that in my head.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Of like, just do a great job, be someone people respect. And like we were just talking about with like Facebook, you can't just, no one's going to just, hey, some random guy posted a Bible verse, I guess I'm going to change my life. They'll change it if they have someone they know and respect and care about. And so while we're doing the best job we can as a Christian, and it's very interesting.
Yeah. And and again, you kind of think about it like this is really the way that, from a historical perspective, this is the way that a lot of people have taken those passages. Right? While you're going, you're just going to go about, mission trips. in all honesty, mission trips are a modern invention. The way we do mission trips, and again, I'll that's not to say that the early church did not evangelize. They did. They absolutely did. But a lot of it was done through like monasticism, through monks. I know we don't necessarily look a lot on monks nowadays, but the truth be told is, basically pre-1800s, like, I mean, I'm not saying that they never evangelized, but it was not a big thing that was done.
Right.
There was no such thing as like this big mission trip. Sometimes a monk would end up somewhere and they'd be like, yeah, just live out your life there. And he'd go, okay, you know, and by nature, he would just evangelize while he was there. Now, again, you get up some funny stories. I mean, I think I told you about, and I want to say it was St. Francis of Assisi, but I always mess it up. So it might not be, but who cut down the tree.
I think you might have mentioned it, but go ahead. Yeah.
I can't remember if I mentioned on the air or off the air or what it was, but I mean, the story goes that these people believed and worshipped in this big gigantic tree, and so he just went over and cut it down. I mean, again, but you get these guys, and it was like, they were like, well, I'm giving my life to God, and if I die, I die, whatever, Yeah. so they're like, okay, well, I'm gonna go cut the tree down. So that's what they did.
It's so interesting. Now I don't know. That's just interesting because I've thought a lot about, kind of the things we do, and I've thought a lot about recently because we've talked about the whole idea of like just do the best possible job you can do, Yeah. And I'm not going to get too into the technical stuff because I know most people aren't doing this, but like we've talked before about, I do have a YouTube channel that's about particularly a kids show called Power Rangers that I'm really into. But it's a weird thing because I'm not by any means like the biggest YouTuber on YouTube doing Power Ranger stuff, but I do have some people who watch a lot of my stuff, and I just did a video that was about. There was a character in the show that basically a bunch of people were really mad because this character, she was being very protective of somebody, and they're all saying it was really annoying, and she was really obnoxious because she was just being so protective, and it was just annoying. And so I did this whole video about why is that a bad thing? Like why is it, especially in that context of like they're a superhero, they're supposed to protect people. That's their whole job.
Yeah.
And it was just interesting because this character, the season before, was very beloved and people really liked her, and she was kind of this whole groundbreaking thing because she was the first like LGBTQ character in the show ever, and so people were very into it, and they won a GLAAD award, which is a award based on kind of that stuff. And so this character, and then all of a sudden, if she showed kind of any form of, you could say a male oriented side, like I'm being protective, and most people would originate that to males in some way. But I mean, I also think mothers are protective too. So I don't know. But it's interesting because I kind of, in that point, I was doing this video and I thought, especially everything we've talked about, I thought this is really something I feel kind of led to do a video on, because I feel like people need to talk about the fact that why is it bad to be protective?
Yeah.
That's like a positive attribute in somebody.
Yeah.
And if all these people are saying she's horrible because she's protective, I don't know. And I'm not necessarily tying all my videos to religion, but I just feel like as a Christian, it's like, this is something I kind of feel passionate about. Like that shouldn't be a problem in this world.
But I think that's a big thing to kind of draw on. One of the reasons that when you and I would talk at church and everything, and we kind of said, when we were first planning this all out and saying, hey, maybe we should do a podcast, that was, for me anyway, a big part of the reason, is because to me, theology permeates everything.
Yeah. And
because theology permeates everything, it's almost like I have this worldview, and it's like I want others to see it too. Mm-hmm. And I understand how hard that is. I understand how challenging that is. I was not necessarily, quote unquote, born with this gift. I had to go to seminary, right? Mm-hmm. And have professors that said, no, that's theology. No, that's theology. Yeah. And so it kind of was pushed on me, but at the same time, it's like, it's kind of like the whole Matrix thing, right? Like once you see it, you can't unsee it. Right. Once you realize how much theology ties into everything, it's not like you can just turn that off and say, okay, well, theology doesn't tie to anything anymore. That's just not true. It ties into everything. And so, yeah, I completely understand. You're here, you're looking at something, and you're seeing people get frustrated, and you're like, well, there's a whole theological side here.
Yeah. And
by the way, I did look it up. It's St. Boniface. It's not St. Francis. It's St. Boniface that cut down the tree.
Yeah.
So, well, I had that one wrong.
Yeah. Well, it is interesting. I mean, I feel like I grew up going to church, and like I feel like all my actions are, or at least I hope everybody feels this way, but all my actions I feel like are kind of run through a filter of, is this like what a Christian should be doing? First, no matter what I do, that really should be where like the viewpoint everything comes from. And so I don't know. It's just interesting when I watch some of these, like get into this world of a kids show, Power Rangers, and this YouTube world of all these different people. And I there's things that's like, yeah, I view things kind of differently than certain people because I have that background.
Well, and I think I think that's ultimately a huge part of it. I love, one of my favorite theologians of all time is his name is Bo Geertz. He is a Swedish theologian. He was the main bishop in Sweden forever in the Lutheran Church. One of the things I love about Bo Geertz, and he's since been sainted. He had a few books that I've read, a few daily devotionals and all that kind of stuff. But one of the things I love about Bo Geertz is like he's just unapologetically Christian, but also Lutheran. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is a lot of times, even in Lutheran circles, we kind of get off in these debates over, should we view things like this or like this? And like when you read Bo Geertz, it's like it's not even a question in his mind. Mm-hmm. He's just like, well, why would you even think like that? And I think the same thing can apply to us. I mean, I think sometimes we spend so much time trying to quote unquote Christianize things.
Yeah.
That we lose the fact that Christianity is not just something that you tack onto the end of something. It is an entire view. And again, that's what I'm kind of really been kind of going with is like, there's a whole view here. It's not just, okay, I woke up on Sunday morning, I better get to church. Like, okay, because it's Sunday. It's like, no, it's like your whole world. It's everything around you just permeates. I mean, again, that's one of the reasons that we kind of always wanted to bring up the modern story and stuff like that. And the world has this weird way of twisting things. And I mean, don't get me wrong, it's always done it. It has always done it. Mm-hmm. I think right now we're in a position where, for a lot of Christians especially, they're finally able to see the world do what a lot of people have noticed for a long time, but they just never saw for whatever reason, who knows why. But now all of a sudden we're seeing things get really, really twisted. And I mean, like you brought up the LGBTQ and whatever else. There's all kinds of letters and stuff in there nowadays. I don't even know what they all are. But
I can't keep track really.
But it's like up until like 1979, that was viewed as a mental illness. I mean, agree with it, disagree with it. That was viewed as a mental illness since 1979. So that's 40 some years, 43 years, 44 years. It's 44 years. We have gone from this is a mental illness to we need to laud and celebrate this to the highest degree. I mean, that in literally one generation, maybe two, that is a massive change. Mm-hmm. That is a massive change. And even if somebody is out there listening and they're like, yeah, but I'm a supporter of the LGBT, you need to, even then, you still need to realize just how big of a change that is. Mm-hmm. And now all of a sudden we're seeing the trans movement go haywire. And again, I mean, goodness sakes, what, 10 years? Maybe?
Yeah, it's quite
10 years we've gone from this is a mental illness to if you don't support this, then you're in trouble.
Yeah.
And again, I think some of this comes down to, and again, back to the theological element, like this is one of the reasons that I think a lot of Christians are having a lot of trouble with this is because in a Christian view, you go, no, God created man and he created woman. And there's like a, there's they come together. It's like God designed them to work together.
Right.
And it's like the Christian is looking at this going, I don't get why you can't see what I see.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And the world outside is saying the same thing back. They're like, well, I don't understand how you can't see what I see. And so like the two are just colliding at an absolutely astounding rate. But when you kind of are viewing things through this Christian lens, you're like, okay, I get it. I get it. I mean, again, I believe that God created man and woman. Like that's, and they're different. And I mean, again, we've studied this. Man and woman they're different. It's not a bad different. It's not one needs to be, the complete, tyrant of the other. They're different. They're designed by God to be together. I don't know how else to put it, but like,
yeah, well, I don't know. I think I find everything in the Bible tends to be. Oh, well, of course it is, but I mean, I don't know. I'm just trying to think of the right way to say it. Is that, is it obvious you shouldn't murder people? Well, yeah, because that's really not a good thing. But besides just the fact of, I think I also I grew up, I think, in an era where a lot of it was kind of like, because that's what the Bible says, and it's like, well, but that's true. The Bible says don't murder people, but it's also a really bad idea to murder people just because of everything that would happen. There's a whole reason why God said it. It's not just because God said so and God thought it was a good idea. So let's just do, that's what it's interesting. I don't know. It's just interesting.
But again, kind of to the point, it's like there's a difference between saying, okay, me going out and murdering people is bad just because that hurts somebody and hurting somebody is bad versus saying, okay, God gave that person life, and for me to snuff out that life or take that life is to defile God. Yeah. Like those are, they end up at the same place, but they got two completely different starting points. Yeah. And I think that's kind of what I've been saying. Like Christians, for a long, long time, even the non-Christians kind of agreed with the Christians' outlook on morality and virtue and all these kind of things. And now all of a sudden we're seeing the world go in a completely different direction. And the Christians, I think that's what I was trying to say earlier. Yeah, maybe I said it in a better way now. But and the Christians are the ones left going, just kind of awestruck because it's like they can't possibly fathom how that works. And I get it. I get it.
Well, and I should say, just so someone's not like, what was he talking about the murder thing for? But what I meant is I see, especially just when you do have a family with a mom and dad and, kind of a stable environment, kind of what the ideal Christian life would be, there is a positive to that. I mean, of course.
Oh, yeah.
If there's someone in that factor who is, if the dad's an alcoholic, of course that's kind of got some issues in itself, even if he goes to church on Sunday. But, if you really are following God's word and you have a happy home and kids are growing up in a stable place, there's kind of some really, really positive benefits to that.
Oh, absolutely.
And so so I don't know. I don't always especially with the LGBTQ, it's I don't have any hatred towards them, which as Christians we really should not be hating anybody. But, it's just that I see a positive part or a positive, path for a man and woman being together and raising kids and doing that. Not saying that of course there's lots of factors that could make that not great, but I don't know. I think when people say they're on the other side of that and they're just well, it doesn't have to be a man and a woman. It's but there is a reason why that is a great thing too.
I think one of the things that has been challenging, especially as Americans and especially as we kind of view it, and this is where you end up working a real tightrope a little bit. There is a difference between a political environment and movement and law and the church. Those really are two separate things. We do not live in a theocracy, that is to say a government body that is basically dictated by theology. And And we just don't. Now, we can argue that some of the founding fathers were very religious, and some of them very much were, and others were very much not. Again, Thomas Jefferson, look at his Bible. He cut holes in that thing, cutting stuff out of it because he just disagreed.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's important that we keep that in mind. In that same front, though, I mean, I think one of the things that, again, as Christians we struggle with is when we see the world doing all this stuff, and it's almost like we expect the world to maintain the same virtue and morals that we have.
Yeah. And
then we're shocked when it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where a lot of the fighting kind of comes in, is people get very, very built up over laws and stuff like this, and it's like, and it kind of goes back to it, like, look, the government has deemed that lesbian couples and gay couples can get married. Mm-hmm. That is a legally binding thing. They can go do that. As a church, I don't really have a say in what the government does. Yeah. I can tell you that I won't be marrying any of them. Mm-hmm. I will not be officiating any of those weddings. I am a theologian, and I am a pastor at a church. I can tell you that I stand against those, in terms of as a Christian. Mm-hmm. I can't say that as a Christian that this is a good thing. No, I think the Bible speaks very clearly about that. But you see, there's a difference between what happens in a church versus what happens in a governing body.
Right. But then now, and after you say that, because there are people who would very quickly jump to, so you hate, like, anybody in the LGBT community. Like, of course there were someone who would jump that, but I know you. Yeah. And I know that if there was somebody next to you or a same-sex couple, I know that you wouldn't be, like, throwing stones at them, like, get out of here.
No.
Like, I know you would never do that because you're not that type of person. There's a big difference in just, like, you're not going to officiate the wedding versus, like, what someone would quickly want to accuse you of by saying that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I mean, again, this kind of goes back to, this go back to, I'm trying to think of a really good example of this. Let's say, again, the one I always tend to go to is something that's, maybe very common, such as something like alcoholism. Mm-hmm. It's around, we see it. Let's say you had somebody that was an alcoholic. They were a nonviolent alcoholic. They never got hurt. They never drove when they were behind the wheel. You still wouldn't endorse the behavior.
Right. Of course not.
You might not drive them to a bar.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we're saying. Like, look, if you have a relative that's an alcoholic, you still love them. You still care about them. You want them to stop doing the stuff, you want them to stop, like, drinking themselves to death. And part of that, isn't because you're afraid they're going to hurt you, but because they're going to hurt themselves and you love and care for them. Mm-hmm. And this is kind of maybe a kind of a very quick and easy way to look at sin, right? When we have sin in our lives, it's not as if God says, "Oh, you've sinned. Oh, this is, you can't be." It's like no. It's like what we're doing is we're separating ourselves from God because of our actions, our thoughts, our deeds, all these things. God's not separating himself from us per se. Only we are separating ourselves from him. And in the same way, in terms of alcoholics, in terms of, and again, I know, I'm using this and I mean, and I'm just trying to use it as an illustration. You could do any number of things. Mm-hmm. But I feel like, like going down the murder train, like I think most people would say, well, that's just wrong because you're hurting other people. Like, well, no. I mean, it's wrong because you believe that you can end a person's life, and that's why I try to use alcoholism, like especially in a scenario like this where they're not hurting anybody, they're not damaging anybody. Let's say they've never been married, kind of thing. There's nobody getting hurt here except for the person. Mm-hmm. We would still consider it bad. We would still say, well, I hope they don't do that, and I'm not going to drive them to a bar. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of the same way here. Like, right, if somebody comes in and they are a homosexual, I care for that person. I wish them the best. I want them the best, but I'm not going to officiate the wedding. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to somehow endorse what they're doing. I'm not going to say that that's okay. It's not okay. And I believe that it's a sin. Now, I believe a lot of things are sins.
Right.
So, I'm also not going to, drive the kleptomaniac to the store so he can steal. I'm also not going to drive the alcoholic to the bar. I'm not, there's a lot of things that I'm not going to do because they're all sin, and I'm not going to endorse sin.
Right.
And that's kind of, I think, did I do a good enough job?
I think so. I mean, it's just always one of those things where, I'll say, I kind of grew up where, like, we started a club at I didn't start, but I mean, there was a group that started, they called it the Gay Straight Alliance, and that was the name of the club. Yeah. And it was, and it was just one of those things where there was a lot of people who were really fired up, and they kind of, like, they would come to you and be like, "Are you a part of the Gay Straight Alliance?" You go, "No, I'm not." And then they'd be like, "Oh, so you hate," like, it was very aggressive at the time.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was, especially because I was a part of FCA, Federation of Christian Athletes.
Yeah.
And so it was very like, "Oh, you're a part of FCA. Oh, okay." And then they were like mad at you because you were part of FCA, which had been around way before that.
Yeah.
And so it was just a very interesting, I kind of came through that time where people are very quick to accuse you of things, which, I mean, still people are doing that. So I just know when you hear someone, I just think it's such a difficult thing for people on that side to understand that just because I'm not endorsing it doesn't mean I'm not going to, like, care for you or love you or, show you compassion.
And again, kind of back to our earlier conversation, like with whole Facebook and stuff, one of the things that we brought up is like, hey, you got to, in order to evangelize, you have to have a relationship with a person. And guess what? You can't really have any type of a friendship or relationship with somebody who is not a Christian if you're not ready to handle them in time, because they're not gonna buy into your same morality.
Mm-hmm.
They're not. You're gonna have a disagreement or two with them. You're a Christian and they're not, and you have to be ready to handle that tension.
Mm-hmm.
Now, don't get me wrong. We go back to 1 Peter. Be able to say, the reason for your faith with gentleness and respect. And I completely agree with that. I've had friends that were homosexual in the past, and I'll be honest with you. I was always honest with them. I told them I thought what they were doing was sinful, but I would also tell them I'm not going to stop being your friend because of it.
Mm-hmm. Were those people always, like, positive? I mean, that interaction was never negative. Like, never
I think if you get somebody one-on-one, they tend to do a lot better than if they're, like, fired up over some split hair issue.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've talked to a lot of people in my life that were homosexual, had same-sex attraction, and in my journey, if you will, I've found that most of them were great. I mean, they were great to talk to. A lot of them very nice people. Again, they disagreed with me. And I never hid who I was. I never hid, that I thought, some of the things that they were doing were sinful. But at the same time, it's like, you got to handle that with some politeness, some gentleness.
Mm-hmm.
Again, if you're going to start talking to non-Christians, get ready, because believe it or not, you're going to have some disagreements with them, and that's okay.
Yeah. Now, so it's just interesting. I think a lot about, just as Christians, we have to be very good at communication. And that's actually something, like, my wife's at a new school, and this school is very, very serious about, message parents, like, every day. Like, if there's a problem, kid, just message parents every day, and don't have to have a big write-up, but just say, hey, a little rough today, or hey, this was kind of a problem today. Don't have to attack the parent telling their kid's bad or an awful kid, but just communicate with them so they know. But what I mean by that is just that as Christians, we probably do just need to make sure that we're able to communicate that, that we're not being hostile towards them, but we do disagree, but that's not, it doesn't mean we hate you, but
now I would say, kind of going back and forth, like I firmly believe that Christians need to vote their values. They need to take the values that they have and they need to vote for them. But at the same time, like, I mean, again, look, both parties have sin and stuff in them. Like, I don't care which political party you're going to go with. Both of them have sinners in there. Both of them have some laws and stuff that they want to pass that are pretty awful. If we're really blunt and honest, they do. Yeah. I still firmly believe that you should vote your values, which means you need to actually do research and all that kind of stuff. But then also, again, once whatever is done, once you have done your part as a citizen of the United States, then again, that's when you play the role. Like I'm not going to go out and that's a really good. I'm not going to go out and suggest that you do violence against an abortion clinic, right? Yeah. I am strongly against abortion. Strongly, I believe it's murder. I still don't believe that to fix the problem, we need to somehow do something vile and evil to the clinic.
Yeah.
I think as Christians, because of the law of the land, again, if you can vote out abortion by all means. But in the meantime, why don't you try going and just being with somebody who's thinking about having an abortion? Or here's another thought. How about trying to counsel somebody who's undergone an abortion and now all of a sudden has to live with that loss and regret and that grief? There's something that can literally take the rest of your life. You can just do that and you do a lot of good. A lot of good. And quite frankly, you might even help to kind of slowly put an end to something like abortion. Completely different way, but again, look, it's legal. I don't want it to be legal. Yeah. If the vote comes to me, I'm going to vote against it. Right. But at the same time, this is the law of the land. Therefore, I'm going to do it. I'm going to oppose abortion in a different way, and it's not met with hatred and awfulness and vileness. It's met with love and respect. Again, that doctor that goes in there and does the abortion stuff, I mean, again, he has a different moral compass than me. I disagree with him. And I think what he does is awful and atrocious. But I believe all sin is awful and atrocious.
Yeah.
But you know what? I'm not going to be able to evangelize to him if all I do is talk about how much I hate him.
Yeah, right.
Right? It just doesn't work.
It's kind of like a get-rich scheme or something, like, or get rich quick or something. But, like, with Christianity, it's like I don't think this is a quick, like, you want to change the world and turn people into Christians? Here's a really easy way to do it. Pick up a sign, yell at people for like a day. Yeah. You're going to do a lot, I don't think it works quite that way. But, this is funny because we're kind of like, we weren't going to do a topic today because it was like going to be, I don't want us to talk about something heavy. But then as we go, it kind of turned into something heavy.
It did. It really did.
But
pumpkin muffins does it every time.
Pumpkin muffins every time. But, but it is interesting. I think that's what finding things, and I try not, especially like with the videos I do, like I try not to get into some sort of like, I hate to say the word preachy, but like preachy thing because I'm not a preacher. I don't really have but just trying to spread like positivity through the things that I believe, even if it's over something silly like a character in a TV show that I really like, I don't know. It says we can kind of just spread positivity everywhere we go. So hopefully that.
Yeah. And I mean, again, some of it starts with just, trying to do your job to the best of your ability.
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard to, I think about this a lot with teachers because I worked with a lot of teachers that it's hard to really change things in a program or a school when you're not respected.
Yeah.
It's really hard. I mean, it's hard,
Well, and again, I think this is one of those things, like as Christians, we are entering into an age where we are not, from a societal standpoint, the majority thought. And again, look, I've been to a lot of pastors' conferences and read a few books, not many, but a few that dealt with this, and they talk about pre-Constantinian era versus post-Constantinian era, and what that goes down to is Emperor Constantine, because he was the first Christian Roman emperor, and once he was established, it became legal to be a Christian, and it was the first time in history that it was legal. Like, before that time, you could be put to death. Now, sometimes the emperors or whoever was in charge would handle that with an iron fist, like go hunting for Christians. Other times, it was kind of a like, you don't tell, I don't tell kind of policy. Don't tell me you're a Christian and I won't kill you. Like, and as long as we're all happy, and so it depends on who the emperor was to see, how severe that was. But once Constantine became Christian, all of a sudden it became, from a society standpoint, not just legal, but in fact, because Constantine was the emperor, if you wanted to be in the good graces of the emperor, you better become Christian. Mm-hmm. And so you had a lot of people very, very quickly trying to join the church, not because they were faithful followers of Jesus, but because they wanted to be of the same faith that the emperor was, because that was beneficial to them politically.
Yeah.
And pretty much ever since then, in some way or another, that has been the case until now. Mm-hmm. Like until really recently, that has always been the case. Now, we could say that still is a factor, and it certainly is. Mm-hmm. A lot of candidates will definitely view, Christianity as like, I got to be Christian if I'm going to, be president and stuff like that. But then when they show their own moral compass and everything, all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, well, maybe not.
Yeah.
And I think, but I also think that Christians are slowly coming to that realization that we're now in a world where our thought, our virtues, our morals are not, the key to society. Like society is thinking differently than us. Mm-hmm. And that changes things, and that changes the way we view things and how we do things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the amount of times I've seen people online when something horrible happens and they say, like, people start posting like my thoughts and prayers are with you. Mm-hmm. And the people who will go like, oh, what is that going to do? And they just, it's like they're attacking this person for saying, oh, I'm thinking thoughts and prayers, thinking about you. And they just, I mean, I've seen people I'm like friends with that I've seen go after and just start posting like really nasty things. And it's always interesting because I'm like, they're trying to be nice. Like they're not, not trying to impose like some big, theological thing on you or like bashing. They're just saying like, I'm doing, I don't know. It's just like, it's a positive thing. And but yeah, there's some people just, man, they're so against it.
Well, I tell you what though, it's really interesting. They did a study in, I want to say it was the mid 80s. I need to go look it up again. But they did this study of the effectiveness of prayer. Mm-hmm. And they did this study, and they had some people that were not prayed for, some people that were prayed for and didn't know it, and some people that were prayed for and knew it.
Interesting.
And they may have had some people that weren't prayed for and thought they were. I can't remember. I don't think that was the case, but I think
that'd be mean.
That would kind of be mean,
really
yeah.
Mean.
But what they found, interestingly enough, in this particular study is that people that were prayed for actually tended to heal faster and actually got out of the hospital faster. Now, they tried to redo the study in like the early 2000s, and the results did not come out the same.
Yeah.
And of course, then they say, well, you see, we got you. And I'm thinking, no, God is God. And, if God decided to mess your study up, he decided to mess your study up, Yeah. But at the same time, it was really interesting. So one could, even a Christian could argue with some data points and say, hey, prayer changes things. Like it mm-hmm. does do good.
Yeah.
And so I always, oh man, I can't think of his name. The one professor at seminary, he's since passed away. I just can't think of his name. But, his whole thing is like, if you can do something else, go do something else. But pray first. Before mm-hmm. you can get your thoughts all together, before you can create the petition, if you will, before you can do all this stuff, you're probably just stunned. Just pray first. It's kind of like,
interesting. Yeah.
So I just can't think of his name.
Yeah. You'll think
I'll think of it. I'll think of it in a couple hours.
Yeah.
But anyway.
But yeah. Well, that's it. Thanks everybody for joining us on that. We went down a pretty.
Yeah.
Deep,
we went down
deep subject there.
Yeah. Several all over the place. Over the place. But you know what? This is also the conversations that we have. So
yeah, it's true.
Yeah. So.
Well, maybe we should get on with our last segment because.
We got to have the last segment.
I mean, you can't pass that up.
Can't ever pass that up. No, never.
Yeah, and that is
Church Chatter. Okay. All right, Church Chatter. We got, of course, our big Sunday coming up this Sunday. Mm-hmm. It is our annual Harvest Fest, one of my favorite events of the year. Let me tell you guys. I'm not going to tell you what we're eating for dinner. And I mean, it is one of those things. It's like a potluck. Bring a covered dish, but the meat is going to be provided. And let me tell you, you're going to want to be there. It involves a smoker. That's all I'm going to say.
Oh, a smoker.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's going to be other stuff too, but there's smokers will be involved.
Oh, wow.
Of course, we have a lot of the other stuff. I'm still going to get pumpkins, and kids are going to make their own butter. Oh, it's just going to be so much fun. Now, it is supposed to, from what I understand, there's like a 40% chance of rain.
Yeah.
And if that is the case, we will simply we'll simply host it in the basement, which I know is not the greatest, but you know what? It's better than nothing, and we'll still have plenty of opportunity to have some fun. So it'll be good times. Come join us for that. So definitely looking forward to that. That's Reformation Sunday, so that's also the Sunday we celebrate the Reformation. And that the reason for that is, and I'll just briefly say this, is because it was October 31st, 1517, that Luther nailed the 95 Theses to the church door in Wittenberg. And because of that, we tend to celebrate Reformation Day on whatever Sunday is closest to October 31st. So it is Reformation Sunday. So definitely look forward to that. We have a guest pastor, Pastor Ron Miller. I call him a guest, but he comes in once a month. He's awesome.
Everybody loves him too.
He's awesome.
Yeah.
So I mean, but he's still a guest, right? He's still a guest, but he comes in once a month. So he's pretty fantastic. So we're looking forward to that. And then on November 4th, we have an organ concert.
Yes, yeah.
And that's at 7 p.m. So we're looking forward to that as well. So yeah, we got a lot of events coming up very, very quickly. Got a lot of events coming up. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about at least a little bit the trunk or treat.
Oh yeah.
Which was this past Friday, and it was fantastic. Now,
Good.
I will say this. I dropped the ball on myself. I got there late. I was rushed. I had all this stuff. I had a great idea. I was going to set up. I have a truck tent, like for a truck bed, and I was going to set it up, and I was going to put like camp chairs and stuff down, and then I was going to dress up like Gandalf, and my daughter was going to dress up like an elf, and it was going to be perfect. We were going to have a whole Lord of the Rings theme. I pull in 5 minutes late. There's already tons of people in there.
Yeah, it's always bad.
I get my truck, I get it open, I'm about to set up the tent, and I'm like, by the time I get this thing set up, it's going to be time to go. Yeah. And so I'm like, okay, I'll just put my candy, the candy on my bed. I reached to grab my candy, and when I was at the store, it felt like I was getting like the big bags. Yeah. I did not get the big bags.
Oh no! Yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong. I had some candy. It lasted probably a good 40 minutes, but there was a lot. There was a lot of kids.
Yeah,
man, and it was just awesome. I'll be honest with you. I love it. I absolutely loved it. There was so many great costumes, and I'll tell you about one of my favorites. And again, I'm not gonna. I do actually know who did this, but I'm not gonna say. But she had a sign or something that said "I'm sorry," and she was dressed up. She was a formal apology.
That's pretty good.
It was pretty. Good. It was hilarious. But there was, to be honest with you, there's a lot of great costumes. I just love the creativity. I love it all. I saw an inflatable dinosaur. I saw a lot of elves and stuff. Oh, it was just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I actually look forward to the trunk or treat every year, even though the last 2 years I've kind of called it in. Like this year I didn't get the tent set up. Last year I didn't have enough materials.
Now that's a thing that I think, because I've never done a trunk or treat as someone passing out candy. Of course, you're talking to the guy who didn't do Halloween. Right. So, but I didn't realize how much of like the trunk or like the actual. Each station is sort of a theme. I didn't realize that. Yeah. Which actually, since I'm a very creative person, that really like sparks like, ooh, yeah, that sounds fun.
Well, next year you can ride with me.
Okay.
And we'll I don't know. Maybe I won't actually phone it in for a change. But no, the trunk or treat was really awesome. It was really great. And then on Sunday morning at 8 a.m., at our 8 a.m. service, we had the Good Shepherd kids singing, and it was just, just talk about all around good things. I mean, Yeah, I mean, like Good Shepherd is just such an awesome school, and it was great to kind of have these kind of events, kind of back to back for me. You know, it was pretty awesome. So yeah. Pretty exciting stuff. So that's really what I got. Now, I mean, again, I feel like I need to call somebody for church chatter because I mean, this is what I got, right? I got all this.
No, this is good. I mean, you know, there's not monumental crazy thing. I mean, we have the Harvest Fest.
Yeah,
that is pretty monumental. But you know, we'll have the cool thing is like this Sunday we'll have some brass. You know, we always have brass like kind of on the first song and stuff. So that's always fun. I always enjoy that. But yeah, we got it. It'll be a fun Sunday, and looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's gonna be good times. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else.
The only thing, I mean, at least as far as my bracket goes,
your bracket,
Pastor Chris is still in the lead as far as the pumpkin spice muffins.
Oh man,
I know you.
I took a bite of it. I don't know how I could be in the lead. These are pretty fantastic.
It's delicious. I'm not saying they're not. I'm just when it comes to more of the muffin feel.
Yeah.
You know, texturally.
Hey,
I'll
take it. Look, I'm not gonna denounce my own product, right? I mean, you know.
Any other contenders want to jump in? I'm more than happy to keep this going.
Get them to me before service.
Yeah, all the way up through, you know.
Well, whenever.
I'm not going to cut a deadline. That's crazy. I'm not that.
That's silliness. Mm-hmm. Nobody wants to cut a deadline.
No.
Oh man, it's so awesome. Oh man, so. I think that's going to be it for us tonight. Yeah. Now, again, Casey and I are kind of still in talks, but I don't be surprised if I send a post out saying that we won't have one next week. It is Halloween, and there's a lot of stuff going on. So, understandably, we might not get a chance to record next week, but don't worry. We will be back. I promise. I promise. All right. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
On Friday. So we got that to look forward to.
5 to 7.
Right, we have our Harvest Fest coming on the 29th.
Whoop, whoop.
That's Reformation Day. We have our voters meeting at 7 p.m. for those of you that would like to hear about the things that are going on. We have an organ concert.
All right.
By the way, you know, I was at school board tonight, and somebody said something about the organ thing going on at church, and I completely misheard them, and I was just like, what organ thing? I want both my kidneys. You know, but no, it was the organ concert that's coming up on November 4th at, I think it's like 7 p.m. So we have a lot of activities kind of going on at church right now. And of course, we still have all the other things that have been going on for some time going on. I'm trying to think, if there's any questions that really have been coming up at church, and I can't say that there are. I know one of the big things that you know Bill mentioned is that we have the angel tree names, and we have 40 names. So that was a big thing. So yeah, we got like a lot of the. Actually, it's kind of exciting because, you know, we are getting into that holiday season, and that's always a little bit exciting. You know,
I love it.
You know, Bill and I talked. Was it today or yesterday about decorating the church and how we need to start getting ready for that? And that's just exciting to me.
Yeah,
We're getting ready to move on into the Advent season and all that. I mean, a little early. We haven't even had Halloween yet.
Right. Okay.
We haven't had Thanksgiving yet. So yeah, we haven't had any of those things yet. But it's still exciting to think about. It's coming. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. I will say, unless you have anything else.
No, I'm boring.
I will say, because I've been for a couple weeks felt really bad about this, but literally tonight, I made chicken noodle soup with the noodles. And it was quite delicious. And I will say, the thing I did not really expect was the smell while you're cooking it.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of flour in the bag.
Yeah.
And so when you throw it in, you're cooking up the noodles and stuff. It smells like you just made, like you were making like a loaf of bread or something.
Yeah.
Like there's that doughy, and that was like, man, this smells good.
Right.
It was really good. And I will say this, I'm a terrible cook, I think, because I made it and I had all the chicken shredded. And I started eating. I'm like, oh man. And it wasn't the noodles. It was just like, man, this is like not a lot of flavor. And then I went back to what my mom's main my family, I should say, what they do is they just put about 3 pounds of salt into every recipe. And so which I'm actually not big on. I'm not a big salt guy. Yeah. So I was like, fine, but this is so bland. So I just poured like a little bit of salt into it. And it was like, this is the most delicious thing I've ever had in my life. Yeah. It was so good. And so I have had them now. Yeah. And delicious.
There you go.
Absolutely delicious. I made so much soup, I have to freeze half of it. But I'm definitely...
See, and I actually made soup the other day myself. Again, I used half of a bag of noodles, and I used the other half. But I made soup the other day, and I always I make some of my own broth. Mm-hmm. So I use one thing of my homemade broth, and then I use one thing of low sodium broth because broth has a lot of sodium in it. Yeah. And so that's kind of what gives my salt gives me a lot of salt. So yeah.
Very good. Now I can myself endorse the noodles at the bazaar.
Yes, absolutely, and they're good. I'm like, right?
They are really good. Yeah.
Like I know, like we say, it's like what church makes their own noodles? Well, our church does, and it's awesome that they do that. But it's just you're expecting like cinnamon rolls or something like pecan pie, but it's like it's noodles. Yeah, they make like the greatest noodles ever.
Which now I think next time when I run out, which I have one more bag. Yeah. But when I run out, I think next time I like make pasta, I'm just going to dump like some flour in the pot just so I can smell like, oh yeah, it smells really good.
Making bread.
Yeah, it smells really good. So that's a little thing I didn't expect. But.
That's awesome. Glad to hear you have a glowing endorsement of the noodles.
That's right.
Fantastic. You'll be like the first in line next year.
Yes, I will.
To get all the noodles.
Yeah, because some people are quite vicious. I'm not going to name names because I actually don't know who they were. But they were getting down to the last couple, and someone came in with a box, and they took like 8. And I'm like, there's like 20 left. What are you doing? Yeah. And they just were like, I don't care.
I don't care. We got noodles. We got noodles.
Could care less. They're like, I'm taking them anyway. So, yeah.
That's right. Well, they're good.
They are good.
They're good noodles.
They're good.
That's actually that's a good note to leave on because that's all I have.
Yeah,
and that's all we have. So thank you everybody for joining us this week, and God's blessings to all of you. And we'll hear from you soon. Bye.